Hey there, I'm Jake from Fablebound, and don't worry, the only thing I intend to do with your brain is fill it with information about mind flayers, and not try to devour it or control it or anything. Also known as illithids, the mind flayers are aberrations with incredibly powerful psionic abilities that are feared by all sentient beings across the multiverse. The origins of the mind flayers are a mystery that many of the scholars of the Forgotten Realms often theorize about. Some believe that the illithids are inbred mutant offspring of ancient humans, and with their advanced ships and technology, they've come from a distal crystal sphere known as cluster space. A crystal sphere being, well, to put simply, if you could imagine a large crystal ball that within contained an entire planetary system. Other scholars dismissed that idea for the idea that mind flayers originated in the far realms, or were at the very least warped by it. And the Far Realm is home to many of the weird creatures we stumble upon in D&D, such as beholders, aboleths, carrion crawlers, and so on. A final theory suggests that the mind flayers are actually aliens from the far, far distant future, who with their advanced technology have come back in time to prevent their extinction at the hands of the end of the universe. And so they used an incredibly powerful spell jamming spell and sent their fleet back in time, arriving at varying time periods and in different crystal spheres to re-establish their empires. Which is actually the only interpretation of the origins of the illithids that is consistent with the memory of the aboleths, incredibly ancient eel-like aberrations from the far realm who have the ability of perfect memory, and to inherit the memories of all their ancestors. And even with their perfect and beyond ancient recall, the aboleths cannot remember the beginnings of the mind flayers. So unimaginably futuristic aliens might be the best guess of where the mind flayers originated. While we may not know the exact origins of the mind flayers, we do know that they are a society of sadistic aberrations who use their vastly superior psionic abilities to enslave other races to do their bidding and build their empires. The illithid, however, don't see it this way. Through the sheer arrogance of their vast intellect, they believe themselves to be agents of order and caretakers of the multiverse, tasked with taming an otherwise unguided and chaotic universe. And so any creatures they believed to be inferior to them, it's all of them by the way, were nothing more than livestock, only fit to carry out three purposes: to be their food, to be their slaves, or to be their incubators for more of their kind. Which is why in Baldur's Gate 3, you really want to get that tadpole out of your head. But dominating the minds of their thralls wasn't just the means of establishing their empires. Oddly enough, illithids felt incomplete without a mind to control, and would have close relationships with their thralls, mourning them upon their deaths, and some even going mad from the crippling, non-thrall having loneliness. Most were even known to have a favorite thrall that they valued above all else, and would give them trinkets and toys to occupy them during their downtime, which we won't go into the psychology of how weird that really is. What's ironic about illithids is that while they were, for the most part, each their own individual, pushing for the same dream of mind flayer dominion, they were in each of their own communities governed and controlled, not completely unlike their own thralls, by an entity known as an elder brain. An elder brain is an amalgamation of all the brains of illithids that had died in the community and formed together a giant, highly intelligent brain-looking entity, with each brain adding more knowledge to that pool. It served as their center of communication network, constantly sharing and storing knowledge between illithids, as well as issuing commands. So even while mind flayers were constantly vying with one another for more control and knowledge within their communities, they would always be dwarfed by the elder brain. The hive mind control of an elder brain is so absolute that when stumbling upon an illithid colony, you could think of it as a single individual. But there were exceptions to this rule, an example being something known as a renegade illithid, which was a mind flayer that remained out of the psionic reach of an elder brain long enough to recover its free will. And with this free will, they could go on to establish their own colonies free from the influence of an elder brain. Some renegade illithid were even known to cooperate and make alliances with other species. Though if that mind flayer ever found itself back under the control of an elder brain, all of the progress their free will had built would cease to exist. Now, obviously, mind flayers are incredibly smart, and they put their powerful brains to good use. Well, not good use, because they're pretty bad dudes, but you know, things like inventions and stuff. One of their most rare and treasured creations was the nautiloid, a really bizarre flying ship with a giant shell on the back and tentacles coming out of the front. All these weird things actually served cool and practical purposes. The shell at the aft section of the ship were, for one, harvested from enormous snails from some unknown world, but it also provided the illithids a comfortable closed space and protection from the sun. Because, oh yeah, mind flayers hate the sun. And I mean, really, all of the best villains hate the sun. The tentacles protruding from the bow of the ship were actually used to examine and study surfaces of planets in search of specific specimens or prey. But the coolest part is obviously the transponders, which allowed the nautiloid and its crew to shift between planes of existence. Now, just because illithids like to flutter around the multiverse and largely made their home upon the planet Glyph, doesn't mean that Toril isn't home to any of them. In fact, there are many illithid cities here in the realms, the earliest and most prominent being Orndal, tucked away in the Lower Dark, which is just darker Underdark. And while over the centuries they've certainly attempted wars and enslaving crusades upon the surface, and even some of the more prominent cities like Waterdeep, their plans are always thwarted one way or another. Which is probably just part of the streak of bad luck they've incurred, what with the spiraling downfall of their grand empire being organized and masterfully executed by the Githyanki, a race formerly enslaved by the illithids and now relentlessly hunt them down on any plane they can. But that story and the story of Gith will be for a video of its own. But for now, if you enjoyed this content, consider subscribing to the channel and giving this video a like. Thanks a bunch for watching, and I'll see you around the table. Guys, help! They said they're gonna put this tadpole in me if you didn't subscribe. Nah, I'm just kidding. This isn't even the same universe. You should still subscribe though. Right there. Subscribe.